So, about 2 months ago, tabloid newspapers in Great Britain ran an unusually biblical headline. The headline stated, "End of the World 2018." Subheadline, "Will the rapture end the world today? Shock prediction says yes." The story, sourced from Christian preachers in the United States and Europe, joined what it called disturbing dots from current world events to arrive at the conclusion that the world would end either in April 2018 or the 26th of August 2018. We made one, might not make the other. These so-called signs of the times included the relocation of the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the ongoing saga on the Korean peninsula, the volcano in Hawaii, and the discovery of unusual fish in the Pacific, all of which apparently mean the imminence of Armageddon. Now, I'm very aware that the bit of Mark's Gospel that we're about to read is open to misinterpretation. And so, I need to tell you that what we're about to read in Mark's Gospel wasn't written to you and me. It was written to other people. People who lived thousands of years ago, thousands of miles away. It was written in a foreign language, in a foreign culture. And before we can begin to understand what these ancient words might mean for our lives today, we have to first of all try and make sense of what they originally meant to their first audience. And these people were a church like us who lived in the city of Rome in the mid-60s of the first century. And as a church, they were having problems. A few of those problems you already know about. You know, for example, that in the year 64 AD, there was a fire in the city of Rome. You also probably know that at the time of that fire, it was widely rumoured that Nero himself, the emperor, had started the fire to clear way for his new palace. You further know that in order to divert some of those rumours away from himself, Nero blamed and then punished the most hated group within Roman society, the church. You're probably familiar with the account of Tacitus, who said that Nero fastened the guilt for the fire on a class hated for their crimes, the Christian church. So this is a problem for them. If you're a follower of Jesus living in Rome in 64, 65, 66 AD, you are a hated person. Every day you live with the fear of arrest, of torture, and death. This you know. What you may not know, however, is that in addition to coping with these domestic problems, Christians in Rome were also having to come to terms with disturbing news from the mother church in Jerusalem. In 66 AD, a group of Jewish fanatics / terrorists successfully attacked and destroyed the 12th Roman Legion stationed in Palestine. Buoyed by the success of this unlikely attack, they then took over the city of Jerusalem and made the temple their temporary headquarters. And as a direct result of this revolution, all sorts of weird and crazy talk started coming out of Jerusalem. There were sightings of messiahs, there were sightings of Jesus who'd been dead for 30 years at this point. There were all sorts of prophets and preachers on every street corner with a placard saying the end is nigh. Armageddon is coming. Sell your possessions, give me a $54 million jet. Did you see that story in the news this week? American preachers asking for $54 million so he can buy a new jet. The logic is because in these times I need to get around the world as quick as I can to tell as many people as I can the good news / bad news. Good for him. So here's the question on the lips of Mark's audience. By the way, I could do with $9.99 for a new bike. I'm in no hurry. So here's the question on the lips of Mark's audience. Mark, is this the end of the world? In our private lives, we're living through hell. Internationally, we hear all these weird stories coming out of Jerusalem. So tell us, is this the end? Are things going to get worse? Mark unequivocally tells his church, no. Absolutely not. And then he tells them the following story. Jesus was leaving the temple. One of his disciples said to him, "Look, Jesus, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings." So in the past few episodes in Mark's Gospel, Jesus and his disciples have been in the temple. And apparently the most impressive thing about the temple was its really big bricks. According to history, the bricks were 12 meters by 3 meters by 4 meters, which in architectural terms is just big. A rabbi from the period said, "He who has not seen the bricks of the temple in Jerusalem has not lived." So leaving this architectural wonder of the ancient Near East, the disciples, who remember are rednecks from Galilee, they come from North Bay, they've never seen a 2-story building in their life. Okay, they come out of this huge building and the only thing they can think of saying is, "Oh, Jesus, those are big bricks. Look at those big bricks, Jesus. Jesus, I don't care anything, but those are big bricks, Jesus." To which Jesus says, Jesus was always serious, right? Jesus says, "Do you see those great buildings? Not one stone will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." So now at this point in Mark's Gospel, he explicitly says what on previous occasions he's only alluded to. The temple, the architectural epicenter of the Jewish faith, the financial epicenter of the Jewish faith, the business center of the Jewish culture, the thing that held everything together that was so important for all of them. One day, it's going to be done, it's going to be finished, it's going to be destroyed. Segue out of the Bible into our life. Listen, friends, and listen carefully. Get this into your noggin. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing lasts forever. Doesn't matter how big the bricks are. It's going to come to an end. Everything ends and it's always sad. Accept this. The good things in your life will eventually end. That's the way it works. Some of the bad things in your life will eventually end. And that's always good. Things change. Things come to an end. Accept that. Back into the Bible. So then the disciples ask, "Well, when will this happen? What will be the sign that these things will be fulfilled?" In other words, Jesus, when will the temple be destroyed one stone at a time? And then in his response to this question, Jesus obviously is going to have to talk about the future. But the reason Jesus wants to talk about the future is not to give Christians a working knowledge of what the future will look like. No one knows what's going to happen in the future. No one. The reason Jesus talks the way he's about to talk is to motivate his followers to keep on having hope and to keep on having faith in the presence. And this is why Jesus goes on to talk about the need for discipline and vigilance. Look at what he says. Watch out. Be on your guard. See that nobody deceives you, because many will try. Many will come in my name, claiming, "I am he, this is it, this is what you need, send me your money, buy me a jet," whatever. And many will be deceived. So Jesus, as he's about to talk about the future, has this deep concern that in the future his followers are going to be hoodwinked by Bible teachers. Teachers who claim that they've got some inside track on what the Bible really says, and they'll come and they'll talk and they'll get good, decent Christians mixed up in all sorts of nonsense, and that nonsense will distract them from the basics. having faith, having hope. I mean, what's more exciting? Think about it. Listening to a Bible teacher who says, guys, let's try and get a grip on our temptations. Let's maybe try and stop sinning so much. Let's start forgiving other people. Let's keep believing. Let's stop holding on to grudges. Or listening to a Bible teacher who says, here's what the news means about the end of the world. One cannot compete with the other. And this is exactly the sort of thing that the church in Rome are dealing with in the mid-60s of the first century. We know from various historical documents that in the religiously and politically charged atmosphere around the Jewish rebellion in 66 AD, there were several very convincing messiahs, all of whom had a reputation for working miracles, all of whom could wow a crowd and draw an audience. And it's also a historical fact that there were Bible teachers, Christian Bible teachers, doing the rounds in the mid-60s of the first century who claimed to be able to interpret the significance of contemporary events and had the inside track on what it all meant. And here in Mark's Gospel, you have Jesus saying 30 years previously that this is exactly what's going to happen. I'm warning you. Be on your guard. Watch out for people who stand up and say, this is what this means. Send me your money. Blah, blah, blah. It's a fact, a sad fact, but a fact nonetheless, that throughout the entire history of the Christian church, you have this pattern whereby periods of increased geopolitical tension always lead to some Bible teacher or other claiming to have a special word from Jesus on what it all means. For example, just before the first Gulf War, I recall as a young Christian being taken rather excitedly to a church service to hear one of these Bible experts demonstrating how what was happening in the Gulf today was prophesied in the Bible, and how that meant that the end of the world was just about to come. And it was all very scary and it was all very dramatic, and it didn't happen. But what did happen was that a group of people who formerly were very interested in the basics of Christianity, loving God, serving others, all that, suddenly became interested in something else. They became interested in the weird, in the fringe, in the fanatical. Faith became less about lighting a candle in the dark places of this world and more about finding obscure verses in the Bible that apparently show how we're about to leave the world. And it was all very sad. In last week's Bible teaching, we learned that Christianity actually is simple. Christianity is a two-sentence religion. Love God, love other people. End of story. Jesus is saying here, don't be distracted from that simplicity. Therefore, next sentence. When you hear of wars and rumours of wars, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. This is life. This is the world. It's always been like this. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes. We need them. In various places there will be famine. That's life. From the 1st century to the 21st, the sorts of events mentioned in this sentence have always been accompanied by prophets of doom from various religions, including our own, saying one way or another, this is the end of the world. You name a natural disaster or a war or a political event, and you can find someone who says, this is predicted in the Bible, and this means the end is nigh. For example, have a look at this. So, what is this? Actually, I have no idea, and I've been to seminary. So, this is a Bible code. And this Bible code, particular one, allegedly says that Hurricane Katrina was prophesied in the Old Testament. So this is a page from the Hebrew Bible, and some guy living in his mum's basement with a beard, watches lots of Star Trek. He looked at this page from the Bible, he drew a whole bunch of conclusions And the main headline is, "This proves in the Bible that Hurricane Katrina was prophesied in the Bible, and this was God's way of punishing America because Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip." That's what this allegedly says. Does that sound plausible to you? Really? Would you believe that there's a page in the Hebrew Bible that mentions Hurricane Katrina and America? But many do. Many are taken in by this. And this is exactly what's happening in Rome in 64, in 65, and 66 AD. The church are hearing these rumours about the Holy Land. They're hearing about earthquakes in Asia Minor. And they're hearing Bible teaching, weird, convincing, convoluted Bible teaching that says this is the end of the world. Sell your possessions and give them to me. Do you ever wonder about that, by the way? Like, if the world's about to end, why do I have to sell my possessions and give you the money? What are you going to do with it? Right? So Mark is teaching his church, and he remembers this conversation that Jesus had with the disciples 30 years earlier, where Jesus says, "No, this isn't the end. This is just bad stuff happening. And in this life, bad stuff happens. And you need to be ready for it. You need to be mentally prepared for it." And so he says, don't be alarmed. Such things happen in life, but the end is still to come. The clear point being then that when Christians hear about bad stuff happening, or when bad stuff happens to them, they're not to be distracted from their task of loving God and serving others, because this is life. Bad stuff happens. And when bad stuff happens, it doesn't give you a pass from the basics of Christianity. What these bad things are, however, notice what he says. These bad things are birth pains. Curious phrase, isn't it? The phrase birth pains in Jewish literature is only ever used to describe the sorts of suffering that will have to be endured before the end comes. So just like you can't give birth without pain, so too in Jewish thought, you can't have a better future without pain. So Mark is saying here, yes, crazy things are happening in your life. I get it. Yes, crazy things are happening in the world. They always have, they always will. I get it. But all of this craziness and all of this pain and all of this tragedy, all that is just, it's a hint of what it will be like at the end. Things won't last forever, but it's not the end yet. It's just a reminder that there will be an end. And so the point being, don't you get drawn into speculation or anxiety or worry about the future. You just concentrate on living right today, on doing right today, because today's all you can handle. And can I remind you of that? Today is enough to handle. Don't worry about what might happen tomorrow. Don't add up all of the may and may not happen bad things that might happen to you this week, this month, this year. You can't handle all of that. Just get on with today. Today has enough trouble, does it not? No? You got enough on your mind today, do you not? Don't worry about what you've got to handle this week or this year, or what might go wrong, or what might fall apart. You know what? It will fall apart one day. You're going to fall down, you're not going to get up. That's life. But today you're alive. Enjoy it, deal with it, focus on today. That's enough. Verse 9. Realism. You must be on your guard. You will be handed over to the local councils and flogged in the synagogues. So for the first 40 years, the church was basically a Jewish movement. The church headquarters were in Jerusalem. They were actually in the temple. The church used to meet in the courts of the temple. And most of the church were either Jewish or Jewish sympathizers. And so for that reason, Christians by and large, carried on going to the local synagogue. That was their identity. And here Jesus forewarns his followers that they're going to find that difficult. Everything that's important to them one day soon is going to fall apart, because the synagogues are going to reject them, and they're going to make their life incredibly hard. Think about how these words about being flogged in the place you love, being rejected by the people you value. Think about how those words must have been received by our Christian forebearers suffering under Nero in Rome in 66 AD. These words are a reminder to them, as though they needed it, that Christianity is not a utopian fantasy. And this is one thing that all these end-of-the-world preachers had in common in the first century and still have in common in the 21st. They all talk about getting off this bad planet and entering into the kingdom of God, where things will be paradise. And all through Mark, Jesus says no to this nonsense. Following Jesus in Mark's gospel is never about utopia or paradise. It's not about getting off this planet as fast as we can. It's about living in this world as best as we can. And it's about living in such a way, so faithful, so devoted to one's duties and responsibilities, that it often leads to adversity. And that adversity is not an aberration of the Christian life. It is the norm. Christianity, I think, in our North American culture is too cuddly, too soft. Christianity was made for trouble. It was fashioned and birthed in struggles. The story of the church for the past 2,000 years has been of people lighting candles in dark places and just coping with stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I'm acutely aware that when you come here Sunday by Sunday, you don't come on your own. You come with your stresses and your strains and your struggles, with the weights on your mind, with pressures, and you can hack it. That's one thing you can do. You're good at that. You can hack it. You know, I think if you had paradise, you wouldn't know what to do with it. Your body would have an allergic reaction or something. Trust me, it's not good for you. You can hack difficult stuff because you've got faith. You're good at holding on to hope when hope is slender. You're good at that. You've proven that over the years of your life, over the years of your faith. This is not an aberration of Christianity. This is what Christianity is like. It's the way it's meant to be, we read in these verses. Look at what the next sentence says. Whenever you are arrested and brought to trial, don't worry beforehand about what you should say. Okay. Wouldn't that be the exact opposite of what you would think? Just say whatever is given to you at the time, for it's not you speaking, but the Holy Spirit. Now, put yourself in the shoes of the men and women who first read this sentence. When you are arrested and brought to trial, don't worry about it. The Spirit will help you. They were living that life. It's going to be hard. Look at the next sentence. Brother will betray brother to death. This is where it's going for you. Father will betray child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. All men will hate you because of me, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. See, I'm disappointed because I would have thought in the first sentence, when I read that if I ever am in a bad situation and I have to say something, and then you tell me the Holy Spirit will tell me what to say, I'm going to say something clever and I'll get off and things will be fine. But now I read that's not the case. Now I read God's going to help me and then I'm going to get extra screwed. Now I read, I'm going to be faithful, I'm going to do my best I can, and my family will turn on me. My friends will turn on me. The people I trust most in this world will turn on me. You know this already. But living right doesn't always get you a better life. You will do your best. Best you can. No less is expected of you. But your best will not always yield the hoped for results. In this life, you will be wronged. You will be betrayed. You will be mistreated. Deal with it. That's life. You're so welcome. I wish it were different. But does it do any good to wish it were different? Or is it better just to get it into the head that that's sometimes the way life is, and accept that and find the strength we need to get through that? I think it's better to look at yourself in the mirror every morning and say, I can make it through the day. I can do this. I can do this. I can handle it. Next sentence. Jesus, still talking in response to the disciples' question about when will the temple be destroyed, then he gets into specifics. Jesus says, listen carefully. When you see the quote-unquote abomination called desolation standing where it doesn't belong, then understand, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Now, the phrase abomination called desolation was a well-known and well-understood phrase within first century Judaism. It was used to refer to something scandalous being inside the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And in the first century, it was universally understood to refer to an event that took place in 168 BC, when a rather mad gentleman called Antiochus Epiphanes went into the temple in Jerusalem and thought it'd be a really good idea to build a temple of Zeus here. So he built like a mini temple of Zeus in the middle of the Jewish temple and sacrificed pigs on it. So that went down well with the Jews. However, here, Jesus speaks future tense, using a masculine pronoun to talk about a person who will one day enter the temple in Jerusalem to desecrate it. So here Jesus isn't talking about a temple that was erected inside the temple in 160 BC. He's talking about something that will happen in the future. And he says to his followers, when you see this person standing in the temple, you must get out of Jerusalem and run for your lives. Now, for a large part of the 20th century, Christian prophets of doom have been scanning the horizon to try and find this abomination called desolation. Some people thought it was Obama, for example, right? You'll find people online who say it's Donald Trump or Kim Jong-un or whatever. There's always some guy who Christian preachers say, this finally is the abomination called desolation and the end is coming. This is ignorant of history. After the Jewish rebellion of 66 AD, the terrorists made the temple their headquarters. This was a scandal. Worse still, they placed one of their top assassins inside the Holy of Holies in the temple, and they made him the high priest. And this high priest terrorist used to walk around the temple wearing the robes of the high priest, and it was a joke. It was a joke to him, it was a joke to everyone else. Jesus is saying in 30 AD, when you see a man standing in the temple who doesn't belong there, who is an abomination, you must run for your lives. It's a historical fact that the church who met in the temple up until 66 AD survived the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. Why did they survive? Why, when the Romans came into Jerusalem in 70 AD and destroyed everyone and murdered everyone, did the Christian church survive? Because they weren't there. In 66 AD, the church saw this man standing where he didn't belong. They understood this to mean that this is what Jesus was referring to 30 years earlier, and they ran for their lives. Look at what Eusebius says in the 4th century. He says, before the war of 70 AD, the church in Jerusalem were bidden in an oracle. So he's referring to what Jesus said 30 years earlier. To depart the city and dwell in a city of Pera. And so, of course, the whole point of what Jesus says about this is that the church should run away so that it might survive. Then some more detail. When you see this guy standing where he doesn't belong, when you see murderers on the temple, let no one who is on the roof of his house go down or enter his house to take anything. Let no one in the field go back to get his clothes. So there's urgency now. When you see these guys taking over the temple, it means the Romans are coming. You're going to all be killed. Get out of town. How dreadful it will be for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray this won't happen in winter. Rivers swell in Palestine in the winter. You can't escape. Because those days will be days of distress, unequaled from the beginning of time until now. Classic Jewish hyperbole. If the Lord had not cut short those days, no one would survive. But for the sake of the church whom he has chosen, he has shortened them. Then the important point. If anyone says to you, pointing to the temple, pointing to this man who doesn't belong there, look, here's the Christ. There he is. Do not believe it. The clear command is, when you see these things happening that shouldn't be happening, don't misinterpret it as an opportunity. See it as a sign to run for your life. The message to the church is that there are some things that should make you run. Not every opportunity is a good one. Not every change is a change for the better. Sometimes the right thing to do is to run away. And what I love about this part of the Bible, complex as it is that it is refreshingly real. In talking about the future, he says, look guys, there's going to be pain. It's going to be rough. You know, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you're not a princess. You're not going to marry Prince Charming. And there certainly is no happy ever after, at least not yet. But what there is faith. There is the ability to stand strong in the struggles of this life, and against all hope and against all odds, trust that one day tomorrow will be better. And things will eventually work, and that the stuff you are going through at the present will pass. Remember one of the most repeated sentences in the Bible, and I'll leave this with you if you're going through stuff. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. The pain, this too shall pass. The struggle, this too shall pass. The loneliness, the confusion, the despair, the one day after another holding on and holding on, this too shall pass. There is a tomorrow that is better than today. And in hope and in faith, we'll see it. Any questions on any of that? Actually, I shouldn't have asked because I went on too long, and Han Solo is going to start soon. So. Thank you for coming. God bless you. See you next time.